Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Lies We Left podcast. This is a podcast about sisters and our journey through trauma. My name is Erin. I'm Brooke.
Ashley.
And we are the sisters. Yay. We're going to be talking today about God. And thankfully, we have someone who I feel like is she's been pivotal in my life in experiencing God in different ways and really redefined the relationship between myself and God for me. But I consider her a spiritual mentor, and she has just really helped me in my life. But this is Pat. Welcome, Pat.
Welcome.
Hi.
We're really excited to have you.
Well, thanks. Thanks for asking me because this is very special for me too. My name is Pat, and I'm going to tell a lot about my story about how I came to know God and what my life was like growing up. My dad was in the Air Force in the military, and military life is very interesting as far as a child is concerned because you're moving a lot. And that was one of the things that really helped when I moved so much. Then, when I had relationships and they lasted a long time, I didn't know what to do with that because I'd always gotten rid of relationships. In fact, I'd been married to my husband 7 years, and I said, are you going to leave me? And he said, no, I wasn't thinking about it. And he said, why would you ask me that? And I said, I've just never had a relationship this long, and I don't know what to do with it. And so it was all a new journey for me. It also affected me in ways that I didn't really realize because I didn't want to get involved with people. I didn't want to get to know people because I was afraid that they were going to leave, right? Well, I obviously had to get that healed because if it begins to affect my adult life, then something's going on in my childhood that needs to be healed. And when I say it like that, that's what I mean, because I do believe that the journey is about healing. And because I am a believer in God, I believe God is the one who heals us. Obviously, when you go to a counselor or somebody like that, that involves healing. They are doing just exactly what God probably directs you to. But anyway, I grew up as a Methodist, and we went to different churches because, of course, we moved. Went to chapels at the base, and also went to regular Methodist churches wherever we were living. The Methodists that I grew up with, the churches that I went to, they talked about God, but I don't recall any of them ever saying anything about being saved. I just remember when you join the church, you join by letter of a transfer from another church, profession of faith, whatever that meant, or from another denomination. So that's how I grew up with this thing called profession of faith. But I really wasn't sure what that meant. So after we had to go to church every Sunday, and after I got out of the house and went to college, I still went to church because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. And I'm glad that I did because I really think it directed me to God. It sounds weird that I would be in church all this time and not be really directed to God, but it just happens. So I did the regular college things that you should do that aren't so great, but anyway, got into drinking and a bunch of other things that you shouldn't do. But anyway, and I'm not saying drinking's bad. It's the way we did it that was bad.
There was a lot of
It's
partying
a lot of
going on.
parties, a lot of fun. And so anyway, when I met my husband, he was a drinker. And so that's what we did. I mean, and honestly, on a Friday night, we just said, let's go get drunk. I mean, we weren't thinking about one or two drinks. We were talking about getting drunk. And so it so happened, though, I kept going to church, and a pastor that I had in a Methodist church talked about, he must have said something about being a Christian, because I remember thinking, I wonder what a Christian is. I think I'm supposed to be one, but I'm not real sure what that is. So I was talking to a friend of mine, and she said, well, you are. You go to church every Sunday. And I said, I don't know. I think there's more to it than that. And so she gave me a little booklet called How to Be Sure You're a Christian, which was the perfect thing that I needed because that's what I was questioning. So after reading this little booklet in my apartment on a Sunday night, I prayed the prayer at the end, and I accepted Jesus. I've invited him into my heart, which is what it said. He needed to be on the throne of your heart. And so I didn't really know what that meant, except this little booklet said that you would know God. You could sense God. God was around you all the time. I'd not thought of that before. So the next day, I was at work, was on the streets of Dallas, walking back to my office, and I thought, God is here. He's really here. I never thought about that before. And I thought, that's interesting. So next day, and I won't go through my whole journey with God. I'm just telling you in the beginning how it worked, because sometimes people do this and they don't really know if it took or what that meant or how it was. And so, anyway, about the next day, I was in the laundry room at our apartment, and all of a sudden I had this feeling of joy. And I thought, man, this is different. I've never had this before. But it felt so good. And I thought, something's happened to me. I'm not real sure what, but I think I might have gotten saved or whatever those words were. So after that, I kind of noticed that things were different. And also, the one thing I thought, Lord, I can't do this because I drink so much. And that's what I thought was terrible. So he showed me how to do it, though. We'd go to a party. The person there would fill your glass, and they would ask you what you wanted. So I got a drink, and then after that they were all drunk, so nobody ever asked you again what you wanted, so you could just go get whatever you wanted. So I'd go and get a Coke. And and it was just a knowing. I don't know if y'all have ever had that, where you just have a knowing of what God is doing. It's not like this voice that came to me, do this. And it felt right. It just felt good. And that was the weird part. And then I'm at a party, and one of the girls says, you're acting kind of like you aren't drinking much. And I said, no, I really don't want to. And she said, well, it's kind of weird with all of us drunk and you're not. But anyway, so the journey, even though people said things, it didn't deter me from what I knew God was directing me to do. So I, at that point, began to notice what was happening to me. And I thought, what I might do is read the Bible. So I started reading the Bible. I read Good News for Modern Man, not King James. Sorry about that. And it was like a story. So it was very good for me to read that instead of King James, because I don't think I would have got through as well. And I did the New Testament. It only came in the New Testament. But I started out reading it. And so time passes. I'm deciding, because I'd always gone to Sunday school when I went to church, I thought maybe I should do that too. So the church I was going to, I decided to be in a couples group, I guess. Only my husband didn't go to church, so I just went anyway. the guys wouldn't talk to me because they figured their wife would not like it. The women wouldn't talk to me because they didn't want me to talk to them because of the husband. So basically, I went and was, I guess, I was there because I wanted to know Jesus. Sorry.
You're good.
And I wasn't there for people to love me or like me. I just was there because I wanted what I wanted. And this is the real interesting part about the whole story is that as much as there were roadblocks in some ways, it's still, there was something inside of me that kept going and kept saying, this is what is real. So anyway, long story shorter, as time went by, different things happened. My husband finally got saved, and so we started going to conferences and we were both going to a church that was really very upbeat and spirit-filled. And even though it was Methodist, And so as time went by, we just learned to grow in God. And so as we grew, and also my husband felt called to be a pastor. And I did want him to get saved, but I really didn't want him to be a pastor. Sounds terrible. But anyway, he finally did become a pastor through different things. And so that meant I was who I was, which was a pastor's wife, which I didn't really want to be because I'd heard about them. And
what did you hear? You got to spill it. What did you hear?
Spill the tea, Pat. Spill the tea.
Well, they became just very straight kind of people. And there was one lady who had lost her husband, and she felt like she had lost who she was because now she wasn't a pastor's wife anymore. It was like they took on this title. I didn't want, well, I'm sorry, Lord. I really didn't. I really was not wanting a title, but I knew that my husband was supposed to do this, and I knew that I was supposed to do it with him. And so one of the things, though, we had to do because he was Methodist was move. I didn't want to move. I'd already done that kind of thing, but we did, and I did. And went to small towns in Texas. Never lived in a small town. Didn't know about cows. Didn't know about anything that they they talked about. You know. Then in fact, the first church asked if I wanted a pot-bellied pig, and I thought, oh my gosh, where am I? What happened?
How old were y'all when y'all moved?
Why would they ask you that?
Because they had one in the pickup.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Like they were just driving around with a pig? This is pre-Biden days when people were giving away pot-bellied pigs from the back of their pickup.
Where am I?
Oh my gosh.
I know. Well, I learned about pot-bellied pigs. We didn't take one, but praise God. I'm sorry.
I hear they make really excellent pets.
Yeah, I do hear that too, but I just didn't want to.
How old
Try
were
it.
y'all when y'all moved?
Oh, about 40.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, we were supposed to be mature, right?
You were supposed to take an animal for your farm.
That's right. And I was mature enough to say no. And so, anyway, the journey of being a pastor's wife happened, and then he retired. And when he retired, I retired. Although a pastor really never retires, they keep that thing that who they are. But it was okay for me because I've never really thought of myself that way. And
I thought when all pastors retire, they just shut the door to their office and stay inside and read their books and watch TV.
that's kind of what he did.
Yeah.
You're right.
Pretty typical of every pastor, I feel like.
I think it has to do with TV. But anyway, as time went along, then he retired, and then that was a while back, and now I'm where I am today. As far as the ministry that I do, back in 1985, I learned about inner healing, and that's what I call it. I call it inner healing. It's healing of memories. There's different names for it. And so I just knew God wanted me to do that. So I learned how to do it through Rita Bennett, was a woman that wrote a book, and we learned to do it. And so, I'm just an ordinary person. I'm not a professional, but it was interesting that I could learn this healing that you could do with people. And so did it for almost 5 years right straight then. And I adored it because you just saw people just transform. It was just beautiful. And then we moved because he was a pastor, and we moved to a little tiny town. And all along the way, though, since then, I have done ministry with this, just different ways. People would call me. I heard you do this. Would you meet with me? That kind of thing. So all along the way, I've still kept up with it and still done it. And mainly that's how y'all came, is by somebody telling you this. I do this. So it's been great to be able to do this for God and to it's just a part of who I am, really.
Did you ever personally work with someone who does the inner healing? Like, did you ever do it yourself before, you started? I've always meant to ask you that. And I just
What
never
if
have.
I did it for me?
Mm-hmm.
On myself?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, it's just I hate to call it a tool, but it is. It's kind of one of the tools in God's toolbox. And yes, I definitely did it on myself. Now there were times, and I would like to say this, there are times when you really need somebody else to walk you through some things. And there were some things that happened to me that I really needed that walking through with someone else. But most of the time I just did it on my own. And
So, can you explain for someone who has never heard the word, or maybe they have heard the word inner healing, but you're talking about a different inner healing? So, could you maybe describe that?
that's a good point. Yes. What I call it is allowing Jesus to walk through your life in some place. And that's kind of how we start. It's a session. I pray, and Jesus shows the person where they need some healing. And then they invite Jesus into the memory. Jesus is always with us, but we don't always see him there or know he's there. But he will be with us even before we're Christians. He loves us. He knows us. He, knitted us together in mother's womb. So he's always there. And so what it does is when he comes in, and he will come in physically, I mean, it's not like you hear a voice, but in your memory and in your visualization, however that is, it can be in your mind. Some people see it they have a knowing, and then they see it, begin to kind of visualize it. They can describe it, let's say it that way. So they can describe whatever's happening to them, and then Jesus comes in and he shows them what he would like for them to know, or what he would like to have seen in their life. And then he can heal. It heals. It absolutely heals the pain. You're taking out the pain is what you're doing. And he heals the pain. Now, a lot of people say, oh, will you remember? Yes, you will remember, because God always wants you to have a testimony. He always wants you to remember some things, but he doesn't want you to remember the pain. And so after that, you can usually talk about it, as y'all have done, because the pain is not there anymore. So you can usually, you know, relate what happened to you. And it also, he can show you something that will help you in your life now. And that's the whole point, is healing the child inside of you so that the adult can come forward and you can go forward to see what God really wants you to have.
I remember when I got your information from Aaron, and I remember when I contacted you. And what year was this?
Oh, it was at least, I know, because I remember.
It was
I was trying to
2020,
think.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Before
it was.
COVID. Or no, it was maybe during COVID.
Yeah, it was during COVID. So 2020, I remember I reached out to you because I was doing my EMDR like every week at that point, and it was just so intense, and I just was having such a hard time with all of it. And I remember Aaron gave me your number. I reached out to you, and I remember feeling very nervous before we met because I just didn't know what to expect. But I kind of was just going off of, you know, everything that Aaron told me, and it sounded great, but I just didn't know what to expect for myself because I never have experienced that level of like being so connected with God. I've never had that before. And so, but I remember, and I'll never forget, whenever I came into your little area where we would meet,
The blue
and
room.
yeah,
Blue-
and you didn't even know anything about me. Like, I mean, you knew, I guess, a general sense of, you know, why I wanted to come, but you told me immediately before we even got started, and before I told you anything about me, you told me, you were like, you know, Jesus really wanted me to tell you that he sees that you're climbing up this ladder. And oh my gosh, it's gonna make me tear up. But he sees that you're climbing, and I want you to know that you're going to make it out of that ladder.
Oh,
It's
that's very nice. I did not know that.
yeah.
I didn't remember anyway.
Yeah, but no, you said that to me, and I just like broke down because it was just so encouraging, and it just felt real.
Mhm.
And kind of like what you said, like that knowing, it was just something that I previously never had. And then, you know, the rest is history.
Mhm.
So the start of it was really cool.
A lot of times when people are going to counseling, I have to be careful that I don't do something also. I mean, I don't want something to come up and then you go back to your counselor and say, well, that's not how it works, you know, or something like that. So I have to be real careful whether that's a good idea or not. But after talking to y'all and seeing your story and knowing that you were going to counseling, I also sensed that from what y'all had gone through, some of it was that God was not a good God to y'all.
Yeah.
Had a lot of ideas about God that weren't true. I'll just say it that way. And so I thought, well, at least what I can do is bring you into a relationship with God, because your counselor is bringing you into the stuff that y'all have dealt with. And sometimes it can mix, but thing of it is, I depend so much on Jesus that I don't think about whether it's going to conflict. If it does, he'll tell me. So basically,
Well, the reason why I came to you was because, I think it was my sister-in-law who told me about you, and then my mother-in-law. But I had tried everything, you know? I'd tried therapy. I tried different forms of therapy.
Mhm.
And yes, things were getting out. I was discovering more. But what I had not tried was the spiritual aspect. And, you know, at that point in time, yes, I mean, everyone is a spiritual person. We all have a spirit. But I definitely wasn't as connected to anything like that. I was very hardened. I was hurting too. I was dealing with not knowing if some of the memories I had were actually real. I couldn't have sex. I couldn't, there was so much stuff that I was struggling with. And I feel like maybe instantly you knew that I had issues with God. You were always very kind about everything, but I mean, you're pretty observant, so I feel like it just took a few minutes maybe of me just saying things to you. And, we prayed off stuff, but I remember I had never experienced anything like what I had with you. It was very much like, it was almost like someone, it was like you go into maybe a different dimension almost, like someone gives
It really
you
is.
whatever a shroom is, and then you take it, and then you can you're just, it's very interesting, and explaining it doesn't do it justice. But I remember just having that first vision of a memory, and Jesus led me through that. And I just sobbed because it was such a painful memory. It was probably one of the most painful memories that I've had.
Wow.
And I just sobbed. But it sounds crazy to say I saw that memory. I experienced it. But I can talk about it because at some point in time, I'm sure anyone who has anger towards God or anything, they'll be like, well, Jesus was there. Why didn't he do anything? And I've learned more about that. But just the walking away from it and knowing that I wasn't alone.
I had never experienced anything in my life. I don't remember if I went to Pat after you, but I told Stephen about it, and I told him limited experiences that Aaron had shared with me and Ashley, and he was like, I don't know about this, Brooke. I'm going with you. If you're determined to do this, I'm going with you to check this lady out, because you don't know what she's praying over you. I want to know.
Well,
And
you do have to be careful.
Well, and I felt so bad, Pat. I was like, this lady is going to get so offended, and she was so sweet. And right away, Stephen was like a little boy and just melted right there. And when we got in the car, he was, after we had done all the work, and I boohoo cried too. It was incredible. It was incredible where Jesus met my wound. And at the time, it was in extreme anger that you girls were hurt. I mean, it was affecting my sleep. I could handle myself getting hurt, but knowing my sisters were hurt. And on the ride home, Stephen just said, Brooke, did you feel that? God literally came in the room. I felt him. You could feel a frequency of Jesus in the room. And after that, he was like, go to Pat. I need you to go to her. Meet her every week.
Do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy to think that your relationship with God can get better than what, like, I didn't realize that my relationship with God was so bland, I guess. I mean, I knew that it felt very, like, not legalistic. I mean, it was legalistic at one point, but it felt very monotonous.
Doing your thing and he's doing his.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, like I didn't feel like really connected, but one of the coolest things that I'll always remember is being able, like, Jesus showing me literally a mountain, and it's like he's just showing me everything that's in front of me and showing me that I have a future and that, like, here's what's ahead. And then I literally go to Colorado not that long later, and I literally see that same exact place, and I had never been there before.
You never told me this.
I thought I did. I cannot make this up.
You
It was
robbed your sister of good tears.
You did.
I'm sorry.
You did. You robbed me.
She would have cried. I could see her tears welting up.
Yeah, it was the coolest thing. I think that this was absolutely essential to, and for anyone really, I feel like, to increasing your relationship with God, but in a different way.
Well, and actually, I feel like you were more like accepting of trying to build your relationship with God, whereas I was very much like I was very, I don't know, hardened, I guess, but also like because Pat, you were so gracious with me all the time, always telling me.
Thank you.
You were always very gracious, and we laughed. We had a lot of good laughs, and I'm sure you laughed sometimes because you're like, I don't know what to say to her, so I'm just going to continue laughing. um, but
I know how to look like I know what I'm doing, but I don't.
but I mean, it was quite different because I learned so much from you through your grace and through your willingness to accept that another person has a different journey and that they see God in a different way, and it never offended you. It never offended you. You're just like, he can deal with it himself. I'm good. I don't need to defend God or anything. And it was that relationship that I think that also helped the healing.
That's good.
It's I don't know, that's how I have always viewed it.
Well, thank you. That's a very good way to explain it. I think the biggest question most people have is, if God is good, then why did what happened to me happen?
Yeah. It's $1 million question.
I know. And what I tell people is, I can give you a theological answer. I mean, sin started, when would you like to start? With Adam and Eve. But honestly, there's words that Jesus can tell you that I will never come up with to that answer. And so that's what I want to do, is I want him to show you, to teach you why did he put you in the family that he did. After I forgave my family a lot of things, I could see that the way I was brought up was helpful in my adult life. But until I was able to really heal and forgive them, I really couldn't see the good parts of it. And that's why this is so important. And it does have to do with forgiveness. And forgiveness is not always easy, and it is a journey, as we all know. And yet there is a way to, and forgiveness has a lot of layers too. I mean, a lot of people say, oh, well, I've already forgiven my dad. And I said, well, how about the time that he beat you? Do you remember forgiving him for that? Well, no, I don't remember that, because the emotion is so there. And so that's when we go back with Jesus. Jesus shows them something, and then they can forgive. You don't always have to go back to every memory. I've known that Jesus can do things in so many different ways. He can lead you to the river, and have all these memories in the river and float them down. I mean, it's quite amazing what he can do. And so I don't put it into a little box that says he has to do it this way.
So what is actually happening at this point when you're working with someone? Because I remember you guiding me through certain keywords, and was I seeing in my spirit? What was it that I was visualizing? Because those visions were not coming from me. Was it my spirit seeing these things in the spirit realm?
Probably, yes, because it is a spiritual thing.
Okay.
And I can visualize most things. So, but that's just a gift God's given me.
Okay.
And you're right. I never thought about it, but it really is from the Spirit.
Okay.
It is the Spirit of God that gives us those things, because he's showing, it's really interesting, that question, because he's showing us soulish things that happen to us, our body, our soul. But yet he's doing it in the spiritual way, which is really how we're all supposed to walk. We really should walk by the Spirit. That's what he wants us to do. How does he want us to do life? How does he want us to handle somebody that we don't love? What does he want out of that? And so what I do is I just say, well, Lord, how do you want to show me this? I don't try to love somebody. I just say, well, Lord, can you show me something about them so that maybe I can see how you see them?
Can you help me out, dude?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Throw me a bone, something.
And sometimes that's what it comes out with. The other thing when I was doing this for myself is I journaled, and I have a whole notebook of memories that I did and things that I did. I've since, I think, threw it away because I've kept it all these years. And I thought, when I die, someone's going to find this notebook and start reading it. And I thought, maybe I better get rid of it because it is my life, but I have what Jesus wants me to remember. So I don't really need the notebook to go back and see how much I hated somebody or whatever the situation was. And so to me, it helps to journal. Lord, do you want me to love this person? And if you do, can you show me something? And then he can show me something about it. And I can write that down too.
So, if someone wants to start doing inner healing work, the way you're talking about it, where do you start? Where does a person start?
Understanding, I guess, that Jesus will heal your memories. A lot of times people don't know what it means. And so a lot of times what happens is just like what happened with y'all. You want to know something spiritually, and you go, well, how can I ever learn this? Or how can I know something better in the spirit? And somebody will tell you. So a lot of times it's God showing you somebody. And they may not even really do inner healing. They just know more about God at the time than maybe someone else. Or they have a better walk with the Lord, I guess you might say. I'm not a professional anything. I'm just a person that is a Christian who loves the Lord very much, and he gives me these giftings to be able to share with other people. So a lot of times it's the Lord directing you in where somebody can be, if nothing else, just another voice to hear someone else. But also it can happen the way it happened to y'all, where, well, what do? I don't know. Well, somebody told me Pat does this.
So, Pat, we start with Pat. No.
Yeah, right. Her contact number will be at the bottom of the screen. No, I'm just kidding. Well, Pat, thank you so much. And we're going to have another episode with you on it, so that way we can talk a part two. So we can have kind of more of a Q&A and talk about some common things that questions people may have, and
Questions that we have.
yeah, questions that we have too. But yeah, I think we'll wrap this one up and move on to our next one.
Thank you so much for joining us. Continue doing the hard work of healing.